But with Amanda, you taking the steps to get into a better situation, what steps did you take? What did you find most helpful? Was it speaking up about it? Was it seeing a therapist? What really helped you? What really facilitated you just feeling better about yourself and just feeling like you have some control over this life you were giving, in a sense?
The first step was definitely the therapy. The second step, I would say, was probably taking the time to write my story. So towards the end of therapy, it was November 2020. My therapist asked me, I don't think that there's much more that I can do to help you. You've overcome all of these hurdles, but I know you well enough now to know that you're not going to stop your journey here. So what are you going to do next? I told her, I said, I think I'm ready to write my book finally. And she reminded me, she's like, well, you've already got several books, right? And, well, yeah, but they're all pretty small. Okay. I said, I haven't written the book. I've never talked about Scotland. I've never told anybody what really happened when I was there. And she said, okay, well, Christmas is right around the corner. How about we team up again in January and I'll check in with you and see how it's going. So early January, she reached out to me and she said, so how's it going? And I said, oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing? She said, no, that's not what I asked. I said, how's it going? How's the book going? And I told her, I said, I finished it. I was working 2 full-time jobs at the time. And she said, how did you get it done? I said, how do you not get it done when it's finally ready to come pouring out of you? It was a 350-page book. Kind of a massive undertaking. It was the largest book that I had written to date at that point. I was really proud of myself. I just got it all out. And it didn't matter if I was going to publish it or not. The release for me was getting all of this poison that was inside of me that I was carrying, putting it down on paper and being able to walk away from it. I gave it a physical body separate from my own so that I could leave it on the shelf and walk away. It ended up getting published on my 10-year anniversary of freedom from trafficking, which was June 19th of 2021. And a month later is when I met my husband. If I had not gone through the process of writing this entire book and getting all of this garbage out of me, I would not have this functioning relationship that I have now.
And a shameless plug here, where can I get the book? Is that on Amazon? Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's available on Barnes & Noble online. My book, that one is called Custom Justice, and you'll see half of my face on the cover of the book because we only show one half of who we are to the outside world. Kind of little personal story there with the book cover. But my website, growthfromdarkness.com, you can actually order a signed copy directly from me from the website.
And Amanda, now, if you don't mind touching about your current relationship with your husband, is there some struggles that you still go through with your whole life experience? Maybe what have you learned in having a successful relationship?
There was something that just recently came up that kind of surprised me. And it's how we respond to a crisis. Whether it's a small crisis or big crisis, it doesn't matter. How we respond to a crisis. His reaction confuses me because my brain can't make sense of it. He's very calm, cool, collected. Well, I suppose we'll get through this too. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to circle up the wagons because I'm afraid that all hell is coming down on our heads and we're going to burn to death. I'm in crazy mode trying to organize everything and get everything done all at once because I don't have a choice. And he sees it as, we've got time, we've got a choice, we'll get through it, we'll be just fine. And it just throws my brain off. But probably the biggest thing for being able to make this such a functioning, happy, healthy relationship is our level of communication. He read my full autobiography before we ever got engaged to be married. He knew the dirt. He knew the deep, dark underbelly of everything that I had been through. And he made the solid choice to love me in spite of it all, because he knew that there was still somebody underneath it all who wanted to be loved and needed that communication and that connection with another person. And he chose to be that person. And that's huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. You need somebody that fully understands you, and one of the best ways to understand you is reading a book, going through your past, and the fact that knowing that he's okay with all this. I'm sure that means so much, because I I haven't had things happen to me similar to you, but I did have my issues growing up as well, and you really do feel broken. You feel like you're unaccepted. You feel worthless. You feel useless, and you have to almost, in a sense, you almost need somebody to almost like trust you times two. You need like that greater trust in a way, because you never feel like you're enough, and then you finally slowly start to realize that, hey, I'm just as good as anybody else. So you really need somebody to really be able to unpack your baggage in a sense and get through it, because it's not something that you're going to be able to hide forever.
Right.
Because if you're gonna hide it forever, then you're basically still doing what you have been doing for your whole history. You need to unpackage that, and you have to be able to give your true self to that person, and that person has to accept you. If they don't, they don't. There's nothing you can do about it. But only way for you to be happy is if you unbox yourself, and that person does the unboxing, and they're okay with whatever's inside.
Right. Absolutely. And anybody who says or thinks, I don't need to share this part of my past because it's all in the past, it will always be a part of who you are. And it is so important to be able to share that with the special people in your life, whether that's a best friend or a husband or a wife. It doesn't matter who that person is. If they are that important to you, then it is that important that they understand this, because otherwise they're never going to understand how to avoid your triggers and how to avoid hurting you in repeated ways that you are so quick to recognize. You can blame them for everything that everybody else has ever done if you're not careful. You've got to share this.
Yeah, 100%. It's really strong, because it's almost like you owe it to yourself, and you also owe it to them, because how can they understand, or how can maybe they change without knowing what happened? Like, if you're upset about something that they can't understand why you're upset about, how are they ever going to understand why you're upset if you don't tell them the history or the story of what has happened? You have to be able to explain to somebody, hey, I feel this way because of this, and that. And that's when they finally realize, okay, now I understand why you feel this, and then they could change, or they can help you through it. Otherwise, you're just looking at a blank slate, and they're always questioning about why this, why that. As humans, we had this need to understand. Once you understand something, then we could change, and we could better our lives, or we could live a little bit happier.
Right. And you don't want the people that you love feeling like they have to walk on eggshells around you, because that's not allowing them to really be themselves either. You should both make sure that you have the availability emotionally to be yourselves. And if you're not there, you don't need to be in a relationship.
Yeah, wow, it's your life's crazy. Like, I don't know any other way to word it. I hope you don't get offended by me saying that, but you've been through a lot. Like, I don't know. Like, I went through my share of things, but hearing what you went through, it's like you feel like my life has been perfect in a way,
But trauma changes who we are. It changes who we are fundamentally. The main first step of dealing with trauma is going through the grieving process, because you have to grieve for the person that could have been and would have been had you not gone through the trauma. That person is no more. Your entire life has completely changed. It doesn't matter. We can try to compare traumas all we want, but it doesn't. That holds no bearing. It holds no weight, because I can't grieve for the person that you were going to be. Only you can do that. You have to go through your own process, and going through that process is part of healing. You can't really compare your trauma to anybody else's. All you can say is, I went through some stuff, and I'm better now.
Wow. Now I'm curious. Would you, if you go back in time, would you change anything that's happened to you in your life?
I would not. And that took me a long time to figure that out. I am who I am. And, we grow up constantly hearing the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but that's such a lie. Friedrich Nietzsche came up with that phrase in the 1800s, shortly before he died in an insane asylum. We can let that one go. We have that strength in us. It is not our abusers. It is not our abuse. It is not our circumstances. It is not our traumas that make us stronger. We are that strong. We just have to dig deep. We have to grab that shovel and not that Band-Aid. And we have to dig deep and find that strength within us to get through it. Stop giving credit to the abusers or the abuse or the circumstances or the traumas. They don't deserve it. You do. You got through it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's intense. What did you find most helpful, I would say, getting over things? Was it just speaking to people or just being honest with what happened in your life?
I had a lot of fear when I first started talking about my experiences, and I thought people were going to judge me and they were going to be harsh and they were going to shame me. And what I discovered instead when I first started talking about it was that I had this huge community of people that were coming around me and going, oh my gosh, please tell me more. What can we do to help? And that gave me the strength to start opening up more and more. So when I first started talking about it, it was like there was this little mouse in me that was trying to talk about it. And it was all quiet and very shy and easily manipulated into not talking about certain things. And eventually I found that there was actually a lion in my lungs. It was just aching to get out. And the more I got talking about it, the stronger I got talking about it, the more people wanted to come and support me. That was huge. Having that sense of community, that was probably one of the biggest encouragements that I had.
Have you ever thought about maybe doing like support groups or anything like that?
I have a trauma recovery mentorship that I do. I do offer group recovery settings where we can do this online or in person if people are here in Colorado. I love doing this kind of stuff. And I have very strict rules about no trauma vomiting. So you can talk about, I survived human trafficking. You do not want to talk about, I survived rapes and molestations on this date and this date and this date and this date by these people and these people and these people. Trauma vomiting is very dangerous because you can trigger other people around you into having an absolute meltdown of PTSD because they're being forced to remember what happened to them. So group settings are great as long as the majority of the people in the group setting are in the same area of recovery.
Yeah. And it just makes them feel better just talking about it, right? Having people around them just be able to relate, because
Right.
you made it seem like it does happen a lot, but people probably just they don't know. And same with everything. If, for example, that's why the AA meetings are done in groups as well, because if more people talk about it, you realize that you're not the only one.
Right, exactly. And having that sense of community is huge. That's actually why I started my podcast in the first place. In 2020, when everything shut down, I had been a member of a small group of survivors here in Colorado that were meeting once a week and doing a life skills class or an art class or something fun. And we didn't have to talk about what it was that we had gone through. Just being in a room filled with other people that we knew had been through something similar was enough. Hey, look, I'm not alone. All these people have been through this stuff. We don't have to talk about it to recognize that, but we can talk about the stuff that we're doing instead. That sense of community is huge.